Hey, everybody, you are watching Wake Up Call Live, and joining me today is Allison Leslie and Jennifer Porter, two femme squires that are here to talk to me about the ABA Journal article. You all know. If you don't know, you've probably been living under a rock, but just in case, it's the article by Susan Smith Blakely, Are Women Lawyers Paying Enough Attention to Upward Mobility?, which has been getting a lot of attention in our circles recently. If you haven't read it, I'll put a link and you absolutely should read it. I think most of our viewers probably have read it. Let me start out with this. Well, first of all, I'd like you both to introduce yourselves and whether you come from big law, what your educational background is, just so our audience can be aware of that. Allison?
Oh, sure. I'm Allison Leslie. For the past 16 years, last week, I've owned my own law firm. Prior to that, I came from a large boutique matrimonial firm, which at the time had 15 attorneys, all focused on matrimonial. Currently, I am a sole practitioner, and I actually enjoy being a sole practitioner. And I practice exclusively family law in Morristown, New Jersey.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Yes, so I've been with my firm, Chiesa, Shahinian Giantomasi, for the past 3 years. I'm a member here, and CSG is a very large firm. We have almost 170 attorneys currently and are continuing to grow. Prior to that, I was with another large firm, also based in northern New Jersey, and started my career actually at a smaller firm in New York and practiced there for my first 5 years. So I've, had the pleasure kind of growing and getting to experience a number of like the large firm culture at two big firms here in New Jersey. And so I can speak kind of to my evolution as I went from associate to partner to equity partner in the big law environment and what it's been like and all of the, the great things that have come with it along the way.
Thank you. So what we have here is a panel of attorneys that have some experience both in big law and outside of big law. So I want to get your initial impressions of the article. Did you become aware of it just from the news, from what we're seeing posted all over social media, or had you read it and had your own reaction to it?
So I can take that. So I had actually seen the article. I get ABA. I'm a member, so I get, various articles and newsletters from them that have, certain current topics. And I had come across the article. And so I just, glanced at it and was looking at it and just kind of read it and just thought to myself, that's an interesting way of looking at things. And then, after that, I started seeing a lot more traction of the article, and I started seeing a lot of, opposition coming out. I didn't see until more recently just how much traction it had gotten. I feel like it's continuing to gain momentum kind of on social media and otherwise. And so, but it was certainly just upon reading it and seeing it, the title grabs you and you immediately want to know what's preventing that upward mobility and to be careful. And I was, you always look for practice tips or it's always great to hear the advice of others who have, come before you about what they think works or doesn't work. And then, have your own takeaway from that. So certainly I definitely had some takeaways from that article that kind of, stirred in the back of my mind that I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah. Well, what was your initial reaction to it, though? Were you offended by it? Were you unmoved?
I wasn't offended, but I feel as though my initial reaction was that it was telling me almost or conveying that you had to choose between family or career, and that speaking specifically about the law profession, that it was saying that you have to be very careful if you choose family, that you may not be able to make it on the path to equity partnership or to success because you might not be able to give it your full attention or the attention that it deserves. And so my takeaway was that I didn't feel that fairly characterized not only my own experience, but that of many women that I know who have a very successful legal career and have wonderful families at home.
Yeah. What about you, Allison? I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, I mean, I truly believe that she really missed the point, quite frankly. And even though from my perspective, I haven't worked in an extremely large, big law firm, I have plenty of friends and mom friends and friends who are lawyers, who are parents. And I felt it really missed the boat. It almost reminded me of, I don't know if you guys remember the movie Parenthood with Steve Martin. And there's a point where he says, listen, the doctor says I have to spend more time with my kid at home. And the guy says, well, then you're not going to get promoted. This guy who goes out for drinks is going to get promoted and you're going to stay behind. I almost felt how Miss Blakely's article, it really missed the point of, we are seeing a lot of men and a lot of fathers who are stepping up to the roles or have always been very committed fathers and lawyers and can have the same career opportunities that women have as well. And I really felt as if the first thing I thought of were my friends like Jen, who are equity partners within their big law firms, who can balance a family and balance a very successful career and not take a backseat to this. And I just found that it was, I think she really missed the mark. I think she had the opportunity to do something really great. And I found that it was just lacking, even in some of the terms that she uses within her article. I think she just really missed the point. I almost feel that we're coming out of a pandemic. We didn't come out of a pandemic to go back exactly the way we were. If you're not coming out of this pandemic and you're not being the best person you can be, then you've missed the whole purpose of this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm hearing the same answers from a lot of other women. When I first read it, my immediate reaction was that it seemed a bit outdated. It just didn't seem to represent what women are really experiencing in the profession today. And so to give her the benefit of the doubt, it occurred to me, well, maybe she's talking about big law. I'm not in big law. So maybe there's something going on there that I'm just not privy to because I'm not there. And I do think that as a solo practitioner, and Allison, let me know if you agree, we have a certain luxury that we really get to do business largely on our own terms. There isn't a managing partner. We're the managing partner. Yes. So we decide what our schedule will be. We decide what our business practices will be. And when you work for someone else, the reality of it is that, you might have some flexibility, but you're part of a larger organization. So that's when I started talking to people like you, Jennifer, who work in big law. And I have to say, again, I was, parroting what you said, is a lot of women were just saying, I read the article and that hasn't been my experience. So do you have any opinion? Like, why did she miss the mark? What do you think happened there? I'm trying to figure out what the disconnect is, and I'm having a hard time with that.
I mean, I think that she was trying to pinpoint, which so many people are curious about, what the root cause is as to why so many women leave the legal profession, or why so many women do not seem, for whatever reason, to make it all the way to equity partnership or to the upper tiers at their firms or in practice, or stay, in the long term, and what could be a cause that's specific to women. And so naturally, I think that draws the conversation to, family, and then what is the relationship between the two. But the problem is, in doing that analysis, I mean, as with anything in life, there are so many reasons, and not all women are even remotely the same. We all have our own life experiences. We all, even the three of us, we come from, diverse backgrounds in terms of our families, our lives, the support network that we have, the types of legal careers that we have. And I think that she was almost, in a way, I believe, to give her the benefit of the doubt, I truly believe that she was looking to say, like, it's very important that you don't lose sight of your legal career when you're making these other life decisions. But at the same time, it almost came across like one was blaming as the cause for the downfall of the other, which I absolutely don't think is the case. And so I feel as though in the article she was talking about all these things along your legal career that when you become a mother, you get easily distracted and you can't look at you can't do things, I think, in the moment. Whereas I live many of my days in the moment and have to, of course. But I did that, before kids, and I'll continue to do that. I mean, long after they're gone and off to college or living their own lives. And that, very much we live with many things that are life stressors and that impact our jobs and that impact our lives. And so I think it took a very complex issue and tried to boil it down into very simple terms. And that's where, to quote Allison, it missed the mark, because, and unfortunately it picked a subject and something to blame that's, many women feel, at least on a personal level, absolutely you can have it all. You can have both. And I think for me, if anyone ever told me I would not be able to have a family and a career, or that discouraged it in that way, it's very disheartening, because they've always both been very important to me, and always, yes, at times does one take a backseat to the other? Of course, because it has to. But the same is true, in the work spectrum. If I have a hearing one night, and it conflicts with something else, sometimes, work takes the front seat. Other times, family takes the front seat, and it's a shared responsibility. It's a shared outcome, but they both win. They can both win.
Yeah. And in full transparency, I actually had the opportunity to interview Susan earlier today for my podcast. And I hope to publish that Tuesday or Wednesday. And I don't want to speak for her, but I do find, and if you read other articles that she's written, I don't know if you have, but if you just took this one article and just read it alone, which I think a lot of people did, because a lot of people just didn't know who she was and they read the article, I could see why they were offended. But I think, as you said, she probably meant well. I think that's true. I think she meant well. I think she meant to offer constructive feedback for women professionals in the field. And if you look at her other articles, she has been a champion for women. But this one in particular, if you read it alone, it like you said, it missed the mark. It seems to present women in a way that's just not relevant today. And I was very honest with her about that. You'll hear about it when it's published. But this article in particular, it just seemed to really miss the mark in terms of what women are really experiencing, whether it's big law or elsewhere. It almost reminded me of something you would read in an old home ec book.
If this was published in 1980, I would understand it. If this was before, Baby Boom, the movie, I would understand it. At the law firm that I was at prior to starting my own firm, it was controversial, notwithstanding the fact that we practice family law. One of the attorneys who was my peer became pregnant, and we were told that she was going on the mommy track. And at that moment, I knew I was never going to be the next partner at that firm. And, I just found it offensive. And now she's a partner at another firm. And she can.
What year was that?
Can have it. That would be 94.
Isn't that amazing?
2004.
2004. Isn't it amazing, though, that was still happening in 2004? And I will say, I think it's not that none of these things happen anymore. I don't think we're naive enough to think that none of this stuff goes on anymore. It's just a lot more covert. I think back in Susan's day, it was overt. It was okay for someone to say, oh, well, she's pregnant. I guess she's never going to be a partner now. I mean, nobody would say that out loud now. I certainly hope that they wouldn't. But what do you see happening over the course of your career? What have you seen trending? Do you think that women have made a lot of strides, or do you think it's just like I said? I mean, is it a little more overt now or covert now? We just don't see it quite as out in the open. What's your opinion about that?
I don't think you see, I don't know that I see it apart, but I'll be honest with you. I think when a young associate starts at Jenny's firm, she's probably, a young female associate starts at, and she sees, oh, Jenny's an equity partner, I think that helps. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that mentoring and just seeing somebody out there, I think makes a difference.
Seeing more people like us, seeing women. We
In the
didn't even get into
organization,
other
too,
things like, people of color. We didn't even get into that. I mean, that's a whole other topic that we could talk about because we were talking about women strictly. I don't know. I just hope that even as outdated as her article appears to be, I hope that it's not a situation where we're dismissing it as, oh, that doesn't happen anymore. We don't need to worry about that. And that there isn't still a little bit of that happening.
Well, I think unless you're vigilant, it always has the potential to backslide. And perhaps that's what she's trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, quite frankly, just the language that she uses. She says, there are pitfalls. What works for women lawyers in the early days of practice may not work as well for them throughout their careers. But that's just not women lawyers. That's everyone.
Yeah.
No one's going to bill their 2,400 hours a year that they were able to do when they were 27 when they're 50 for the most part, right? There is something that is divergent about what happens with your practice and your ability to practice to that level. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's because you have a family. Maybe you have a life. Maybe you have hobbies. Maybe you like to travel. Maybe, and I almost find with this too, that she's blaming all of the women lawyers who are not making partner because they have a family. And quite frankly, I think it would have been more responsible of her had she looked to see what is the dynamic of women making partners who have families, who have children, as she was saying here, or women who do not have partners, do not have children. I'm saying, I just felt that it was really just everybody was lumped in. Every woman has a family. Every woman has 20 kids. She has, what was it? What did she write? I applaud lawyer moms for their best efforts at keeping all the balls in the air. I mean, you don't have to be a lawyer mom to have balls in the air, right?
Yeah, we all have balls in the air.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't have children, so I've often in the past been treated as though I have all this extra time because I don't have kids.
You have a life.
Well, yeah, because I have a personal life, and I get it. Moms are juggling a lot, right? I mean, come on, we're not going to say that they're not, but they're perfectly capable of doing that. But I think some of the examples that were provided in the article sort of trivialized it. I'll just give a couple of examples, like returning phone calls. I'm not sure that any of us needs to be told to make sure that we're returning phone calls. And I think these examples was a huge part of what really struck a nerve with people is, you've got these high-powered women, really capable women reading the article, and, you're interested, like, oh, what should I be doing to pay attention to my upward mobility? And then you read that you should make sure that you're returning phone calls and, that make sure that you're going to networking events and make sure that you're promoting new work with the law firm because she says that people lose interest in that. I'll tell you what, I don't go to bar events because I think they're boring. Okay? I know I'm not supposed to say that, but I find other ways to network. I find other ways to stay relevant and stay connected to people. But I think that was the part for me that just seems so outdated because all the women I know and men, all of us, that's just the age we live in, right? Everybody's got email, everybody's got a cell phone, everyone is probably too connected. We're emailing at 12 o'clock at night when maybe we should learn to turn that off a little bit earlier. So I think for me, that was where it starts to fall off. Is the examples that were provided. What do you guys think?
I would agree with that because, part of what she was saying too, when she was giving the examples, that's exactly it. That's kind of what, really resonated with me in terms of just not connecting to how I was, all throughout my career in terms of like responsiveness to emails or being a team player. I can't remember ever not being a team player or being involved with my team. Even when I was on maternity leave, like going out, and then as soon as you're coming back and staying in the know in terms of your caseload and just, being involved and ensuring that, when you returned, or that you reactivated all of your cases and reactivated, all of your connections and your clients and reached out to them, while at the same time continuing to be committed to your family 100% as well. And so it's again, it's, and I hate to go back to the word balance, but it absolutely is that, as as I was saying, as all things in life are. And so her example as to, you need to be a team player and it's critical for you to be a mentor. And I said, if anything, by you going out on leave and coming back and showing that it's okay if you want to go to your child's baseball game. It's okay if you have a family commitment one day. It's also okay for you to show them, hey, I have a huge hearing tonight. I'm going to be on the next 5 hours. So, you need to go and like attend this event or do this, and show that balance is necessary and a part of everyone's lives. Because I feel like if we as women say, to the next generation or to all the associates that we see or the people coming up that, shame on you, how dare you miss a networking event for a family event, or vice versa, it's that you have to choose between one or the other, and that they are not, responsible enough to do both and to have both.
I'm with you on that. I've heard this concept in the past, and I hear different things from different people. I'm wondering what you think. Can women have it all? Because I've heard some women say, no, you simply can't. There's just too much. You can't do it all. And then I've heard other women say, no, you absolutely can. You can have it all. What do you guys think?
I think you define what having it all means. I think you easily can define what that means to you, put in the appropriate boundaries, and absolutely do it. I mean, I tried a case this past March in court, and I was able to arrange for childcare. I was able to, wear my high heels and put on my suit and try the case and got a great decision. And you're able to balance it. Now, was I working on exhibits in my office until 1 a.m.? Yes. Were my kids also in the office watching like WandaVision? Yes. But you know what? This is how I set an example for them too. They see their mom working. They see their parents working. They see that, in order to have the lifestyle that we want to have, this is what we have to do. And I think it shows, it sets the example that I want them to see when they see me doing this. So I think you can, but I think you define it. I don't think you can go by anyone else's definition of having it all except for your own.
So maybe the better question is, you can have everything that you want, not necessarily at all, because that, like you said, that's a good point. That means different things to different people. But whatever you want, you can have. So if you want the career, you can have that and have children. You don't have to choose.
Or choose not to have children.
Yes. That's a whole other topic for another show.
But I don't think that's also what makes you a woman. I don't. And I think that's also important. I don't think that was touched enough on necessarily in this article, quite frankly.
Well, it was a short article. Susan did note that there are word restrictions, so it can't be too long, and it's a big issue to have to address in however many words this was. It was limited. So I don't know. What do you think she could have done differently, or someone else could have written to answer this question? Because actually, it is posed as a question: are women lawyers paying enough attention to upward mobility? I mean, I guess I missed the opportunity to ask her. I guess she thinks they're not, or she wouldn't have written the article. But if you were to answer that question, is there an answer to this question?
I think so. I think that part of it is finding a firm that's well suited to your needs, that has a supportive, collaborative environment, that has a team approach, that does the types of things that you want to see, that they, promote and retain women, that they have women in their leadership ranks, that they, have a women's initiative or a women's mentoring program, and that they, invest in and support those initiatives, because they hold them in high esteem and value them, because they understand the importance of all of the workplace and all that goes into making it a great place for men and women who have careers, who have families, and who don't, who don't have families, but that it's again, like having that supportive environment. And like I said, I'm lucky enough to have found, I've been a part of firms who do have that great collaborative environment. And that's why I believe, I've in part been able to have the success that I have, because, I have two children. They're 9, almost 10 and 12. And, I took 2 maternity leaves. I was promoted to partner actually while I was on my first maternity leave, but because of all the work that I had put into my career leading up until that point in time. And, and honored, and I'm honored to be, at my firm now, and to be an equity partner, and, invest a lot of, hard work into that. But again, they value that work, and they understand, the needs of all their attorneys, when it comes to diversity, when it comes to, particular issues regarding family. And I think that, we've really been able to, one of the things that I thought was important that we should touch upon is just in light of COVID, this remote working environment. I think that has really kind of opened the door to showcase to firms as well that people can be just as productive working from home and serving the needs of their family there as they can, situated in their office. And so, I love and appreciate kind of that firms are advancing in that direction, which is why I feel like, what we're saying here is that article is a little outdated, because what we're seeing, and I think we're seeing it more and more, and I'm definitely seeing it with like the bigger firms, because it's important. And I don't think that, people are settling for less anymore, because they shouldn't have to.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I think also to Jenny's point too is people kind of expressing and saying what they need. This is what I need to do in order to get this result, in order to do, what you need to get done.
Well, are there any changes that you would like to see in the profession? For instance, if your children decide to go into law, I know that you have a daughter, Allison. Jennifer, do you have a daughter?
Yes.
Is there anything that you could think of right now that you would love to see be a little better for them if they decide to go into the profession?
I mean, part of what I see are workplace initiatives. And I think, there is a lot to be said for some of the studies that come out in terms of, what we were talking about before, like why women leave the profession. And I think part of it is because, there are great demands on our time and how you spread or choose to spread out your time in terms of meeting those life demands and work demands. And so I think just firms that allow flexibility is the key. And so, and also, an understanding environment. So I think as we continue to grow and see the generations coming up, it'll be interesting now that we have, the millennial generation kind of in the workforce and seeing once they start having children and the impact on the workforce as we proceed forward. You're seeing a lot more in the way of individuals, wanting to have quality of life, and but that doesn't mean it's a trade-off for not working hard. And so, people don't have to feel guilty for wanting to take a vacation. And in fact, a lot of times, like here, they encourage people, you need downtime, you need time to rest, you need time to rejuvenate. But then also when it's time to work, it's time to work. You need to, if you have to stay up all night and work on that brief, or you have to do a hearing for 5 hours, so be it. I mean, and you make that commitment. But I think firms that recognize that and kind of, continue to build it into their policies and invest money into it, the ways in which they can continue to grow, increase their percentages. Like here at my firm, we're actually, I think the national average for women in equity is like 20%, 25%, I think in like 2020 polls. Here we're at 30%. So I want to see that continue to grow. I want to see that percent increase over time. But part of that is doing our part as well. I think in order to ensure, the future success for our daughters, should they choose to go in this profession, we need to be part of mentoring younger generations as to, the fact that they can have a family, they can have a career, and supporting them and encouraging them to grow. And, that's absolutely it's part of the job. I mean, I have fantastic people, who at my firm who support us. And, I think that and many of them are at those critical points in their lives where they're deciding, whether or not to have a family or just starting their family. And and of course, kind of coincides. Many women that go to law school, they end up having children slightly later in life because they delay it because they're in school for so long or whatever. So they're kind of at partnership age, right about when they're ready to have kids, or so it's an interesting time for sure. And so I feel like firms that invest in great leave programs that welcome you back, that make sure that they continue to, have an active caseload for you when you return, to give support initiatives to help, flexibility in terms of workload and schedule and otherwise. All of those things, go into allowing for greater longevity.
I can't agree with you more. What about you, Allison? You have maybe a different perspective because you're a solo practitioner. Jennifer can give us the perspective of someone who's at big law, which is a bit foreign to me. So thank you. But what do you think, Allison, as a solo?
I think it really comes from the top down. And what I've noticed with the pandemic, and now that we can do so many hearings, because I'm a litigator. So I am in court on hearings at least once, twice a week with court appearances and trials and hearings. What I'm seeing, so sorry, I keep saying all these ums. In any event.
It's okay. Move forward.
I don't do that during my trials, I'll tell you that. What I am seeing from the judges, and especially the male judges, is a patience that I have never seen before. The judge that I tried the case in Somerset County for, when he wanted us to do our closing arguments, he said, let's pick a date in the calendar. I was waiting to see if my parents were able to watch the kids. He goes, if they're not, bring them in here. He goes, we'll put them in one of the jury rooms. I'll have a sheriff's officer outside of it, but let's move this trial along. That was completely unheard of.
I love it.
I've also had judges, as my kids walk in, asking if they can have an Oreo, asking if they can have a snack. And the judges, and I'll say, excuse me, no, you can't have the Oreo. It's 9 a.m. Get back to class, get back on your virtual class, which I'm sure Jenny may have had to, because Gavin and Charlie are pretty like-minded. And we also went to daycare together too. So
yeah.
In any event, I have seen that their patience level for parenting issues have been tremendous. And I really hope that the bench continues to understand that. I had another judge in Passaic County who moved a motion hearing, which had been scheduled for over a month out, to a morning so that I could go to my kid's band camp concert. Didn't have to do it. My adversary was great. And he was more than accommodating in moving the hearing. If the judges continue to set the tone to make all working parents be able to not miss these opportunities, to be able to actually parent their kids, go to the baseball game, even if it's a matter of being let out at 4:00 as opposed to 4:30. Those little changes, I do believe, will trickle down. Now, what we as a profession do with it is a whole nother thing. Because, of course, wherever you have something like that, it opens the door for people to say, nope, I'm not giving you that adjournment. I don't care if you're on vacation with your family, which I had 2 weeks ago. It lets the door open saying, no, we're going to go to 4:30 because my clients here are paying me for it. And that might be an argument you have to advance. But at the same point in time, this is our opportunity to elevate the profession, not go backwards, to where we were before. And I do think that certainly we do have a fairly good bar, and for the most part, adversaries are collegial. But this is our opportunity to be better people, to try to facilitate everyone to, to try to have it all, like you said earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I see no reason why we can't evolve along with technology, right? I mean, that's one thing we've all learned from COVID, from this crazy experience we've had over the past year or so. And there were growing pains in family court because I don't know why, but we weren't doing e-filing yet at that point, even though so many other people were. But we've come along. People are doing e-filing now. I can't imagine any reason why we would go back to paper filing. Judges have gotten accustomed to Zoom. We've learned how to operate in this new paradigm, and I hope that we don't go back to the way things were. I don't think we would go back 100%. Maybe, some things are better actually in person in court, but it's unfortunate that things had to happen the way they did. We couldn't just see the opportunities that have always been here. We had to have something like COVID happen for us to actually learn how to start using the technology better. But to me, I hate when I hear someone say, and then people really say this, but this is how we've always done it. I mean, you must have heard people say this, right? It's like, but this is how we've always done it. Well, we don't have to keep doing it that way. If it doesn't work anymore, Jenny and I were talking before we actually started, before we went live, that back in the day, whatever day that was, a long time ago, that, the men went to work, right? In the old model, the men went to work and they didn't have to worry about picking up the kids from school or getting home to make dinner and picking up the dry cleaning and dropping the kids off at soccer because they had a wife who did that. Right? The wife was home doing all that. So they got to just go to work. We don't live in that world anymore. Why are we still pretending obviously not us sitting here at this table, but why is anybody even still assuming that's still a thing? It's just not. And I can't help but feel like that's where part of the resistance is. What do you guys think? It just doesn't exist anymore, right? I mean, I hope to God that when your kids are in the profession or whatever it is that they decide to do, maybe they won't be lawyers, that there comes a time when we can even stop having these conversations.
And that's kind of how I read this article. I said, we're really still having this conversation? Like that's exactly what I was thinking. Why is this still a thing? One would have thought that we would have been at a far different spectrum now. And I think that was part of my concerns with the language within it.
Yeah. And Jessica Smith Bobadilla, who just had a comment, I think she wrote this a little while ago, but makes a good point, is I'm not impressed with the way that the ABA Journal handled this because they published it. Susan wrote it, but they weren't blindfolded when they published it, right? I mean, they have editors. They have an editorial process. They have editors that reviewed it, maybe made some edits. Actually asked Susan about this when I spoke with her, and she said they made very minimal edits to it. And then the publisher has final approval, and they published it. But it seems that then when it went viral, not in a good way, that all of a sudden there was a disclaimer and you put
the editor's note in, right?
Yeah. And I don't know. It seems to me that if there's any finger pointing, shouldn't there be a little finger pointing at the ABA Journal? I mean, they published it, right? They approved it. So it's maybe they don't really know their audience the way that they think they do, which makes me wonder.
We should look to see how many women are on the editorial board.
We should look. So I think they need to be part of the conversation, but I don't know. Like, why are we so underrepresented? How did they not know that? How did the women not read this and say, Susan, maybe we need to rethink this one. Maybe we need to rewrite this article. Anyway, so I don't know what will happen. It'll be interesting to see if this all just blows over and we never hear about it again, or if my hope is that we continue the dialogue, and that, whatever the disagreement is here, that we can do it in a respectful way, like we've done. We can disagree in a respectful way and continue the conversation so that we can improve the climate for women, for moms, but also for families, for dads, for managers, right? Because it helps all of us.
It's true. And I think an important takeaway is, and I love the quote, like, be the change you want to see in the world. This absolutely applies to this topic. It's like, if you want to see, improvement in terms of women in the ranks, or women in leadership positions, or, women's representation, in all categories, I think that, we need to be part of that progression, part of that change, and doing what we can. And, again, it goes back to like having that supportive environment, but then also, taking it upon ourselves. I mean, like Allison was saying, like raising our daughters to know that, you can be anything you want to be. Absolutely. And, I'll support you 100%. And that if you want to go into the workforce, if you want to be an attorney, and follow in our footsteps, great. If you don't, great. It's okay. You get to be whatever you want to be in this world. And so, that's the important takeaway, that, we shouldn't be limited or ever view our world as being limited, because, it really isn't. The opportunities out there, and, if you can dream it, you can do it. So
I agree. I love that. It's one of my favorite quotes. And I think all the women out there are doing great. They're kicking ass. And I'm so proud. And Allison and Jennifer, we just met, but it's been a pleasure. And Allison, I'm sure you'll be on here again. I'd love to have you again too, Jennifer.
Absolutely.
But keep doing what you're doing. You're wonderful role models for your children, the girls and the boys, and for the rest of us out here. Thank you.
No, and thanks for having this conversation. I think it's really, really important and timely. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Of course. Thank you for saying yes. And thank you for watching Wake Up Call.